African-American television sitcom What's Happening aired on ABC from August 5th, 1976 to April 28th, 1979. The show first premiered as just a short 4-week summer series, but it caught on with viewers and was rushed back into production, returning in the fall of 1976 to officially begin its first full season. What's Happening was loosely based on the Eric Monte-penned 1975 coming-of-age dramedy film Cooley High. Eric grew up in Chicago's Cabrini Green Projects, one of the most notorious housing projects in the nation. By 1971, he was working basic jobs in LA while pursuing his life's ambition: to produce movies and television shows with African-American characters he could identify with. He hooked up with Mike Evans, who was playing Lionel Jefferson on the CBS smash hit All in the Family. This led to a spin-off called The Jeffersons and to co-creating, with Mike, Good Times, for All in the Family producer Norman Lear. On a roll by 1975, Eric then wrote Cooley High. It did very well at the box office and went on to become a bona fide cinema classic. Sitcoms with black casts were hot at the time, so Bud Yorkin and ABC came to Eric to adapt Cooley High for television. What's Happening was the result. The show was produced by Toy Productions, which was formed by Bud, Saul Turtletaub, and Bernie Orenstein, after Bud ended his partnership with Norman Lear and Tandem Productions. It follows the lives of 3 working-class African-American teens living in the Los Angeles neighborhood of Watts. The show stars teenager Ernest Thomas as Roger Raj Thomas, who lives with his divorced mother Mabel, played by Mabel King, and his younger, sassy, know-it-all sister Dee, played by Danielle Spencer. Haywood Nelson as Dwayne Nelson and Fred Berry as Frederick Rerun Stubbs play Raj's close friends. Shirley Hemphill also stars as Shirley Wilson, a waitress at a local diner where the boys regularly hang out. Fun fact, though the characters of Raj, Rerun, and Dwayne were all high school students, Haywood was the only actual teenager of the trio. He was 16 when the show premiered, while Ernest was 26 and Fred was 25. Ernest, who was originally from Gary, Indiana, moved to New York and secured a role in Broadway producer and director Hal Prince's The Member of the Wedding. A subsequent move to LA got him a small role on The Jeffersons. It was on the set of that show that he heard about the Cooley High TV auditions. Mabel was actually meant to be the linchpin of the series. The former gospel and nightclub singer from Charleston, South Carolina, was new to television. She left a triumphant run and the role of a lifetime as the Wicked Witch of the West in the Broadway hit musical The Wiz to take the role of Mama Thomas on What's Happening. Unfortunately, it was a move she later regretted. We'll get into those details a little later. Danielle was only 9 years old when production began. Her inexperience showed on screen, but she had a certain charm that made the delivery of her harsh comments shine. Haywood was a Garden City, New York resident who began commuting to LA when he was cast as the nephew in the 1975 spin-off of Sanford & Son, Grady. That series only lasted a few months, but producers were impressed with how good he was and offered him the role of Dwayne. 240-pound Fred Berry was an accomplished disco dancer that first turned up on Soul Train and in LA nightclubs with a group of dancers known as the Lockers. He got the part of Rerun after being spotted by producer Bernie Orenstein as he was getting his shoes shined on the NBC lot. Bernie invited Fred to come up to his office after he was done to read for him. Fred obliged, had everyone in stitches, and won the role. Fun fact, in the original script, the character that became Rerun was written as a skinny white kid. After a few weeks on Saturday nights, the show was moved to Thursdays, sandwiched between Welcome Back Kotter and Barney Miller. Ratings flourished. During the first season, Mabel wasn't particularly happy with her role as written. She was playing a maid, after all, and expressed her dissatisfaction by frequently making script changes on the set. While her character provided the strong moral center for the series, she lamented the fact that this couldn't be a 2-parent family, calling the lack of good familial role models for blacks, quote, one of the biggest tragedies on television, end quote. Also, no one was happy that little Dee always got the last word and all the best punchlines. Before long, her character was driving the plot lines as well. Shortly after the second season started production, Danielle was involved in a devastating head-on car accident that killed her stepfather and left her with several severe injuries, including ones to her face that required cosmetic surgery. At the same time, Eric Monte sued ABC, CBS, Norman Lear, Bud Yorkin, and others over a number of issues, including not receiving proper credit as creator of the show. The numbers vary on the amount of the lawsuit, but the most talked about number seems to be $300 million. He contended that after the success of the show, the executives conspired with the networks to rip him off for hundreds of millions of dollars he felt was owed from not only What's Happening, but also The Jeffersons and Good Times. Eric complained that his only compensation for Good Times was $300 every time an episode was shot. He got nothing for the other shows. He wrote the script for the pilot episode of What's Happening with an understanding that he would produce the series. That didn't happen. While he did ultimately receive a $1 million settlement, he alleged that he was subsequently blacklisted in the industry as opportunities to pitch new scripts completely dried up. There was more turmoil as the second season unfolded. Fred and Ernest walked off the production, battling producers for more money and better dressing rooms, calling them small and unsanitary. They adamantly refused to return to work until their demands were met. The dispute was quickly settled and both did return to work. Still, What's Happening was a solid top 20 hit, reaching the top 10 3 times in 1977-78, despite its time slot following the floundering Welcome Back, Kotter and competition from 2 hits, The Waltons on CBS and Chips on NBC. By this time, the principals were earning about $3,000 an episode for a 22-episode season. ABC then moved the show to Saturday nights in January 1978, and ratings took a nosedive. The network switched the show back to Thursdays later in the season, stabilizing the numbers. The increasing shift in focus to the youngsters in the second season meant less screen time for Mabel. She wanted to see her character evolve. She envisioned scripts that had Mama Thomas going back to school, perhaps getting a better job. It was not meant to be. In anticipation of the next season's changes, the last episode of the second season had Raj and Rerun moving into their own apartment. In the episode's plotline, Mama keeps dropping in on them to snoop. It was the last episode of What's Happening to feature Mabel King, and only the second time she had any significant role during the second season at all. The show changed significantly in the third season. Since Mabel was gone, Shirley moved into the Thomas household as a boarder and Dee's guardian. Still on Saturday nights at 8:30, the show had the good fortune to follow a new ABC show that became the surprise hit of the season, Mork and Mindy. While ratings were up, What's Happening wasn't holding on to enough of the enormous lead-in audience. New characters were introduced in an attempt to broaden the appeal of the show. David Hollander was cast as Little Earl, a white kid that lived in the building Raj and Rerun moved into. John Welch played Little Earl's dad, a cop, and Leland Smith was occasionally seen as the Snake, a basketball player working at Rob's Diner. During this season, Fred again threatened to strike over a drastic salary increase. Ernest again, and also Haywood joined him in the strike threat, which led to a heated meeting with the executive producers, culminating with Fred making accusations of racism. In light of the unverifiable accusations and being able to come to terms, the producers opted to cancel the series, which probably needed to happen anyway, since the retooling of the cast and 2 mid-season time slot changes sent ratings plummeting. Famed director Alan Rafkin, in his 1998 autobiography, Cue the Bunny on the Rainbow, had this to say about working on What's Happening. Haywood was a really good kid, and Ernest was an excellent actor. Fred Berry was the one to look out for. He could be trouble. He received many of the show's big laughs. Unfortunately, he later had some personal problems that carried over onto the set. After I had left the show, there was a big contract dispute, and I was told that Fred was the instigator behind the trouble that followed. He convinced Ernest and Haywood to join him in a strike for more money. Eventually, the producers simply had enough of the boys' antics, and they closed the series down. When speaking about the show years later, Bernie Orenstein was also quite candid about all the problems that went on behind the scenes with the cast. One story he told was about their first Christmas. The producers gave out gifts to everyone, which included engraved Tiffany watches for the women. Nice, right? Well, Shirley Hemphill's response was that she wanted a camper, or RV, and gave the watch back. Fun fact, producer Saul Turtletop's wife's name is Shirley, so he gave the watch to her. Bernie went on to reiterate how demanding the cast was and how upset they were that they weren't making millions of dollars. As far as the allegations of racism go, he assures that nothing of the sort went on. According to him, working on What's Happening wasn't a very happy experience, and the best part of it all was the show becoming a hit. In a few markets, the show actually went on to have higher ratings and syndication than during the network run. With this success in mind, a revival was produced called What's Happening Now. It ran from 1985 to 1988, with most of the major cast members reprising their roles. Fun fact, true to form, shortly after What's Happening Now debuted, Fred, once again, began demanding more money. He was subsequently fired before the end of the first season. Mabel King passed away on November 9, 1999, after a long bout with diabetes, having had both of her legs amputated as a result of the devastating illness. She was 66 years old. The very next month, Shirley Hemhill died from kidney failure. She was found on December 10, 1999 by her gardener, face down in her West Covina, California bedroom. Reportedly, she'd been dead for some time. She was 52 years old. Fred Rerun Barry, as he later legally changed his middle name to Rerun due to the widespread public association to his role as the character on What's Happening, died in his LA apartment on October 21, 2003. While he had been recovering from a stroke, the cause of death was listed as natural causes. He was 52 years old. Sony Pictures Home Entertainment has released all 3 seasons of What's Happening. In 2013, it was announced that Mill Creek Entertainment had acquired the rights to various television series from the Sony Pictures library, including What's Happening. The following year, they re-released the first 2 seasons on DVD. In 2015, the company released a complete series 6-disc set featuring all 65 episodes.